Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. So tonight inshaAllah, after we went through the whole method of Hajj, now we go through the small points of Hajj, where the Shaykh will point out the pillars of Hajj. We've already pointed out most of them. And also the Wajibat of Hajj and a few other masail. The Shaykh will point out that we're just going to basically fill in the blanks of those things that we haven't done yet in today's lesson, inshaAllah. So the Shaykh, Jazahullah khairan, recited the first line where the Shaykh says that the pillars of Hajj are four. There's four pillars of Hajj. That is the Ihram. You have to have the intention to go into Ihram for your pilgrimage to be valid, Hajj or Umrah. In this case, he's speaking about Hajj. And then standing at Arafah. That has to be done. These pillars, if they're not done, your Hajj is invalid. Your Hajj is invalid. If there's no Ihram, then you are not even into Hajj. If there's no standing in Arafah, and in the manner which we explained last time, then your Hajj is invalid. There's no Hajj. If you are there in the Haram side, you have to get out of your Ihram through Umrah. If you didn't manage to reach the Haram, then there's a fiqh on a person who doesn't reach the Haram, slaughtering an animal, etc. And we'll come to those masail inshallah in the future. Then the Shaykh says Tawaf and Sa'i. So Tawaf, the Tawaf here is what we said is Tawaf of Hajj, Tawaf of Ziyarah. On the day of Eid, the day of slaughtering, then you go to the Haram and you perform that Tawaf. That's the pillar of Hajj. Without that pillar, without that Tawaf, Hajj is not valid. But we did mention that Hajj has no end limit. It has no end limit. If you didn't, you can do it at any time period in your life. But you won't go out of the second tahallul of Ihram. You'd still stay a bit in Ihram until you eventually do that Hajj at some point in your life. So it doesn't fall. But your Hajj would not be valid until you've done the Tawaf. And the same exactly with Sa'i. The same exactly with Sa'i, except that Sa'i, we'll mention now who is the Qarin and Mufrid, Ifrad, the Mufrid, that person can do Sa'i before the days of Hajj. We'll mention those masail in the next page. تفضل.
والواجبات التي هي الإحرام من الميقات والوقوف بعرفة إلى الغروب والمبيت ليلة النحر بمزدلفة وليالي أيام التشريق لمنى ورمي الجمار والحلق أو التقصير لأجزاء ذلك.
So the Shaykh is saying if a person merely in Hajj did the pillars, the minimum which is the pillars, and these wajibat, so he left out all the sunan, then that will be enough. His Hajj will be valid. Yes, the reward will be much less, but he's done the minimum of his Hajj. And therefore, in reverse, if he hasn't done any of the pillars, or even one of the pillars, then his Hajj won't be valid. And for the wajibat, if you leave it out, then that's going to come in the next line. So which are the wajibat of Hajj? The Shaykh says, it is to wear your ihram. We said that's a pillar. But here, to wear your ihram from the miqat. Or if you're not passing a miqat, from the place where we explained in the opening lesson, where you should wear your ihram from. Then we said the second wajib aspect is to be at Arafah until sunset. Until sunset. We mentioned it in the last lesson. And if you didn't make sunset, as long as you came to Arafah at a portion of the night, then that's fulfilled. That's the wajib fulfilled. If you were just in the day, your Hajj will be valid because you've done the rukn, you've done the pillar. But then if you did not spend a portion of the night at Arafah, then you've left out a wajib. So then you have to pay the penalty. It's coming in the next line. Then the third thing is to spend the night, that night at Muzdalifah. We mentioned which night that you spend. After Arafah, you go to Muzdalifah. You have to spend at least until half the night. And we mentioned how in the last lesson. And then you also have to spend those 2 or 3 nights at Mina, in the manner which we mentioned. That's also a wajib. If you left all 3 nights out, or 1 night out, or 2 nights out, there's 1 dam. 1 dam, since it's 1 action. So you don't give more than 1 dam because you've left out more than 1 night. It's 1 action. Then, وَرَمْيُ الْجِمَارِ, pelting the jamarat, in the manner which we said last time, that is a wajib of Hajj. If you've left out the pelting, the same thing as we said. You have pelting 2 or 3 days. If you've left out pelting on 1 day, or 2 days, or 3 days, you still give 1 penalty. 1 penalty. And then the last thing is to shorten, to trim or shave the hair for a male, and to trim a small amount for a female. That's a wajib of Hajj. And we said it needs intention. So if a person forgot to shave and went home, and then he cut his hair because it was long, then he remembered that he didn't do it at Hajj. We won't say the fact you cut your hair suffices, because this is a part of Hajj, it's a wajib of Hajj, so it needs intention. You have to have the intention that this is cutting of Hajj. Therefore, this now, after you, once it's valid for you to cut your hair, now it's a nusuk. Now it's an action of Hajj. Therefore, a person in ihram can cut his own hair. Even though in general it's haram to remove your hair in ihram. And you can cut the hair of somebody else, even though both of you are in ihram. Because generally you cannot remove somebody else's hair if they're in ihram, or your own hair. But now you can, because it is a nusuk. It is an action of Hajj. So the Shaykh says the difference between leaving out a pillar in Hajj and leaving out a wajib in Hajj is that if you left out a pillar in Hajj, your Hajj is not valid. And if you left out, your Hajj is not valid until you do it as you should do it. That's only once you do that is your Hajj ticked off. And if you left out a wajib, then your Hajj is valid. Your Hajj is valid. But you have to do that sacrifice of slaughtering the animal. We'll come to it in the next dars, inshaAllah. And there's a sin for you for leaving out the wajib. If you left it out unintentionally or ignorantly, then the sin is removed, but the penalty is not removed. The penalty is not removed. And that's why in the first lesson, remember I said we have Hajj divides into knowing the pillars, knowing the wajibat, knowing when there's loopholes or ease, and knowing which one is sunan and what it links to everything. This is one of the benefits. Because if you don't know the rules, then you may have your Hajj either is incomplete, it's not complete at all, or it's incomplete, there's a shortage, because you don't know the wajib. This is wajib, you don't know I need to give a penalty, you don't know this is a sunnah, you cause difficulty on yourself thinking I have to do this, meanwhile there's no need, it's a sunnah, it can be left off and you get reward because you have the knowledge. It all connects to these things. Okay, then the next mas'ala, the next mas'ala is, we said in the beginning that there's different types of Hajj. Hajj is of three types. It's called, one is tamattu', one is qiran, and one is ifrad. So three types. And so there's three types, but the scholars have over 15 or 20 difference of opinions as which type of Hajj is better. But there's only three. Okay, so the first one is tamattu'. On the madhab they say tamattu' is the best type. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, remember we mentioned he took the animal with him, and then after the safa, the sa'i, then he said, if only I knew what I know, I wouldn't have brought the animal with me, and then I would have got out of my ihram. Meaning I would have done it as Umrah, and then I would have intended Hajj. So that is tamattu'. We're going to mention it now. So the best man of Hajj is tamattu'. Then the second method that's best on the madhab is ifrad. Then the third best is qiran. So tamattu' is if a person performs Umrah in the months of Hajj, right, which is Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Those are the months of Hajj. If a person performs Umrah in the months of Hajj, then he ends off Umrah, he completes, he goes out of Ihram. Then in the same year, he performs Hajj, then he's done tamattu'. With the stipulation that between his Umrah and Hajj, he hasn't traveled out of Mecca the traveling distance or more. So he hasn't traveled 80 plus kilometers or more. If he does that, then he's not doing tamattu' anymore. Or we can say, if he goes beyond the miqat, because the miqat, one of the miqats is from the Mecca city that we have today, it's less than 80 kilometers from the miqat, so it's less than travel distance, but you go beyond the miqat. In the past, when Mecca was so small that the Haram itself was bigger than Mecca, then the scholars in the books of fiqh, they say if you travel the traveling distance, therefore automatically you'd go beyond the miqat. Today where Mecca is much bigger, therefore if you were to travel to one of the miqats, I'm forgetting which one exactly it is, then that would be less than the travel distance. So therefore if you were to go beyond the miqat, then perhaps you could say, the fuqaha don't say this directly, but perhaps you can say if you go beyond the miqat, then you've traveled a distance where it would break your tamattu'. Or you didn't cross that specific miqat, but you traveled 80 plus distance, 80 plus kilometers, then your tamattu' is broken. It will connect to something now, we'll mention it. So, an important mas'ala, and that is when we say the time of your Umrah, it links to the time you went into Ihram, not the time you performed your Umrah. What does that mean? Or how? People will ask that I went into Ihram on after Asr on the last day of Sha'ban. But I reached the Haram after they announced the moon of Ramadan. I performed Umrah in Ramadan. So in this mas'ala, in this situation, we say what counts, what we look at is the moment you went into Ihram. What was the date? Not the time you did the actions of Umrah. Therefore, another situation, if a person did the intention of Umrah on the last day of Ramadan, after Asr, he did the intention for Umrah, and then he performed his Umrah after they announced the moon of Shawwal. And then we say to him that you did the actions of Umrah after they announced Shawwal, but your intention of Ihram was in Ramadan, after Asr. So your reward, inshallah, would be of Umrah in Ramadan. Therefore, can you now say, I did Umrah in Shawwal, therefore I'm going to do Tamattu' and therefore do Hajj in this year and I'll get the Hajj of Tamattu'? We say no. Because your Ihram, your Umrah was as if it was in Ramadan, not in the months of Hajj, which are Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah and first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So therefore what counts is the time you go into Ihram. The time you go into Ihram, that must be for Hajj, for Tamattu' must be in the months of Hajj, Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So what happens is you do an Umrah, you complete the Umrah, you come out of Ihram, you shave your hair, you trim your hair. The scholars say it's to trim your hair is better, so you have hair to shave off in Hajj. So you trim your hair or you shave your hair, maybe it grows faster or there's a good few period of time, and then you do Hajj in the same year. That is Tamattu'. That's what the Shaykh says as well. Then the next best one is Ifrad. Ifrad means something singular, one thing. So you do Hajj in that year only. But after you finish with Hajj, then you do Umrah. So after you finish with Hajj, you go out to the closest area outside the Haram area. Because now you, as if you are a person in Mecca. How would a person of Mecca put the Ihram of Umrah on? We mentioned it, that he goes to Adna al-Hill. He goes out just to the hill, to outside the Haram. So this person goes there with his Ihram and he performs Umrah. So here what he's done the complete Hajj and then he's done complete Umrah. But he's done Hajj first, but he's done both. Therefore, he takes the second best after Tamattu'. Tamattu' you do both and also with Ifrad. Qiran is where a person, this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did. Imam Ahmad says, I have no doubt Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the way he did Hajj was Qiran. But because he said, if only I knew, I wouldn't have brought the animal with me and I would have made it in Umrah, indicates that Tamattu' is better. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam preferred Tamattu'. That's why the madhab is that the best is Tamattu'. So Qiran is when you do Hajj and Umrah in one intention. So when you put your Ihram on, Ihram is your intention. You have your clothing is separate. So your intention is what? Oh Allah, I'm doing Hajj and Umrah. Or you intend, oh Allah, I'm doing Umrah. And then before you start Tawaf, you intend Hajj. Because Tawaf is the first pillar of your Umrah. So before you start the pillar, you can play with your intention. So you can change it to Hajj. So it becomes 2 in 1. Right? If you said, oh Allah, I intend Hajj, and then before Tawaf you said, let me do an Umrah, and let me add an Umrah to make it Qiran, because Hajj is Ifrad. Then we say, it doesn't count. On the method it doesn't count, because you don't benefit. How don't you benefit? We mentioned the method of Tamattu'. The method of Ifrad and the method of Qiran is exactly the same. There's only a few differences. Number 1 is your intention. One is intending Ifrad, one is intending Qiran. The other thing is the person doing Qiran, he's getting the intention is also for Umrah. So he'll get the reward for Umrah as well. And if you intended Qiran from the beginning and you didn't do Hajj or you didn't do Umrah of Islam, it will count. That's the difference. Ifrad, you're doing Hajj alone. And once you finish Hajj, then you go and do Umrah. So you then wear a new Ihram. That's why Ifrad is better. So you do a complete Hajj and complete Umrah. And Qiran, you do Hajj and Umrah together, it's merged. So with Qiran, Hajj and Umrah get merged, but you get 2 together. Therefore, if a person did ifrad, but he didn't do Umrah afterwards, that means he just did Hajj, he'd only get the reward of Hajj. Therefore, Qiran would be better than if a person did Hajj alone. So that's the one difference. That's the one difference. When Qiran would be better than Ifrad. So we said the difference between Qiran and Ifrad is intention. We said the Qarin gets the reward, or if he has Hajj of Islam still to do Umrah of Islam, it will count. He won't have to do another Umrah separately. And number 3 is Dam. Dam. Dam means to slaughter an animal. Dam means blood. So blood is when you slaughter an animal, blood comes out. So it's called Dam. So the person doing Tamattu' and the person doing Qiran, they have to sacrifice a Dam. So this Dam, the scholars say it's not Dam of Nusuk, it's a Dam of Nusuk, not Dam of Jubran. So they say this Dam is a Dam that's part of the actions of Hajj. It's not a Dam you give like when you fall short in Hajj. Like if you leave a wajib, you give Dam. You have to sacrifice the Dam to make up for the shortfall. So here they're saying this Dam is not to make up for the shortfall. This Dam that you are doing, it's as if it's a shukr to Allah. It's you being grateful to Allah that you get two types of nusuk, 2 Hajj and Umrah. You get them both. So you give a Dam. You give a Dam. Right? This Dam, the scholars say the exception of those who give a Dam is if you are from the people of Masjid al-Haram. That means you and your family, if you have a family, or you alone if you don't have a family, you are staying in the Haram area. Or some of the scholars say included in is Mecca, the city today. So therefore they say even from the city of Mecca, many scholars today say from the city of Mecca, the travel distance. All the people within there, if they are within the miqat, they don't give them. It's as if they live in the Haram. And on the past, the scholars in the fiqh books, when Mecca was very small, they actually say from the Haram. So you look at your 80 odd case from the Haram. If you have won your ihram from before that, then you pay the Dam. If you are living in that distance from the Haram to 80 k's plus minus, then it's as if you are from the people of the Haram. So you don't have to give them. You don't have to give them. Beyond that, you give them. Or we can say from those people who are closer to the city of Mecca, but outside the miqat. So if you are inside the miqat, the rule applies to you. From those people from the city of Mecca, on the scholars today who therefore will give different rule to the people in Jeddah, etc. So that's one rule, is the Dam. And who gives the Dam? Another 2 stipulations is that this person who did this ihram is that he must have won the ihram from the miqat or a travel distance outside the Haram. From the miqat. So he wore his ihram at the miqat, otherwise no Dam. Or he wore his ihram more than 80 k's from, either we say, or the scholars of the fiqh book say from the Haram. Or today's scholars saying that, many of today's scholars saying the city of Mecca. So the city of Mecca, you look at your 80 k's. If the person wore the ihram beyond that, then he can give the Dam. Then he gives the Dam. 80 k's beyond that. Or we say, included in this mas'ala is you are less than 80 k's but you're outside the miqat. In that miqat that today is from Mecca less than the travel distance. So then you're outside of the miqat. If you were from that miqat or beyond the miqat, outside the miqat, then you give them. If you are from inside that miqat, even though you're less than 80 k's from Mecca, then no Dam for these people. So that's for these 2. There's one more stipulation, and that is the last stipulation is this person doing tamattu', right? For this person doing tamattu' specifically, if Dam comes on him, he has to fulfill this last stipulation. And that is, after he's completed his Umrah and he's come out of the Ihram, then he must not travel the travel distance from Mecca. Or the scholars in the past say from the Haram, right? Scholars today, many of them say from Mecca. Therefore, and we said in the past, when you look at it from the Haram, if you travel the travel distance, you would have passed the miqat. Today you may not. So when they say traveling far to the travel distance, you would pass the miqat. Therefore you have to pass a miqat. To come in, you'd pass a miqat. You'd pass a miqat. Therefore, some people, if they come for Umrah and they finish their Umrah, and then they go to Jeddah, for example. They go to Jeddah, and then they come back for Hajj in the same year. Then those people, if we look at Mecca as a city, they've not traveled the travel distance. So therefore, they give them. If you travel the travel distance, then no dam on you. No dam on you. So this dam is there, not there. Why? Because you are now not doing, your tamattu is broken. Your tamattu is broken. Because you've traveled the travel distance, so you are not as if you are part of Mecca. So your tamattu is broken. Therefore, when you are to come back to Mecca to do the Hajj, that's why I said in the past, when you travel this distance, you would have passed the miqat. So the scholars in the past are saying, now to come back to Mecca, you'd have to pass a miqat. So when you pass a miqat, you have to wear your ihram again. You have to wear your ihram again. Therefore, if you want to do Hajj, you'd probably wear your ihram from the miqat. So your tamattu would break. Your tamattu would break. So you have to stay in the Haram area to get this benefit of tamattu. You can go out, yes, there'd be no dam on you because you're not getting tamattu. So you get ifrat. Unless you went in again with the intention of Umrah and then the whole process again. Or you could come in with Qiran. But tamattu will break if you've traveled the travel distance. Either from the Haram itself, the Haram area, and the scholars of the past, what they say, or we look at the city of Mecca. We look at the city of Mecca. Then that exposes a longer distance which would make us say the travel distance. Okay, so that's with regards to tamattu and the dam. The Qarin would still be in Ihram, so he wouldn't really travel. He'd be closer to his time of Hajj. So that's with regards to them. But the scholars say, and the Shaykh is going to mention it now. In fact, we can mention it now. Okay, so the next mas'ala. The scholars say that since the best form of Hajj is tamattu, if a person is doing ifrad or qiran, then when he finishes this, it's what they say, it's sunnah for him, recommended for him to change his intention from Hajj of tamattu of ifrad or qiran to tamattu. They say you should do that. If the animal is not with him, which we said nowadays it won't happen because you won't bring an animal with you anymore. And number two, he hasn't stood yet at Arafah. So the zahir kalam of them is merely Arafah, a person going to Arafah. Before that happens, you have this option. Therefore, this is almost from, some of the scholars say, some of the mashayikh say, this is from the unique, strange masail of the Hanbali madhab where they allow such a thing. Because the trend of the Hanbali madhab is not that you can change your intention after you've started an action or even after you've done an action. But this situation, they're allowing it. They say if a person has even started his tawaf of Umrah, or he's started his sa'i, or he's finished his tawaf, or he's finished his sa'i, and he's qiran or he's doing qiran or ifrad, they say it's sunnah for him to change his intention to tamattu. So therefore, after his sa'i, he should come out of ihram. He should shorten his hair so that he can get the reward of the best hajj, which is tamattu. So they recommend that that's what the person does. They recommend that's what a person does. On the madhab, for a person to have dam, he has to intend tamattu with his umrah already. So in this case, there would not be dam. Because you have to, when you're intending your hajj, your umrah, you have to intend already that I'm doing tamattu. Okay, then you do dam. So this person, now we've said you've changed your intention of qiran and ifrad to tamattu. But there's a situation where the scholars say that a person who intended tamattu changes his intention to qiran. And that is, so tamattu, meaning this person intended I'm going to do umrah, complete my umrah, then on day 8 or day 9, we mentioned how to do it, then I'm going to do hajj. So now they say this person, they usually mention a lady in hayd specifically. Her hayd has come before she starts her umrah, her tawaf of her umrah. Or she started a tawaf, then hayd came, it invalidates the tawaf. She has to wait for her hayd to end, then she can do tawaf. And she needs to do tawaf and sa'i because she intended umrah. She intended umrah first. So she has to do tawaf, sa'i and shorten her hair. Then she can come out of her umrah to do tamattu and then new ihram for hajj. But now she fears that her hayd is going to continue until the fajr comes in on the day of slaughtering, on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. That is the day of Nahar. That is when the standing at Arafah ends. Standing at Arafah ends when Fajr comes on the day of Nahar, on the day of slaughtering. So she's fearing that since her hayd came, she won't be able to do Umrah and catch Arafah by the time Fajr comes on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. Because she's waiting for her hayd to end so she can do Umrah. So the scholars say that in this case, what she should do is cancel her intention of Umrah and intend Qiran. Intend to make a Hajj and Umrah one. So she'll still get both, but the actions become one. I'll explain now in the next line. So what will happen with her here is that she's waiting, she's in her intention is ihram of Umrah. She's realizing that her hayd will end 2 days after the day of slaughtering. So on 12th Dhul Hijjah, so she realizes that she's not going to manage to get to Arafah if she's waiting for Tawaf for her Umrah. So she changes her intention from Tamattu' to Qiran. Therefore Hajj and Umrah become one and she can go straight to Arafah. Then how will she do her Umrah? We'll mention in the next one with the next thing. So that's a lady who fears that because of her hayd, she won't be able to do Umrah. The same with any other person who is in a situation where they intended tamattu', but they won't be able to do their Umrah. Like you intended tamattu', you are coming in late on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, for example, you're coming and there's so much of crowds. So you realizing that I won't be able to get into the Haram. Or they're stopping the police or whatever, and you're not going to get to the Haram. So you realize that I won't manage to do Umrah. And you then have to go to Arafah. If you're going to continue waiting to get a chance at the Haram, you're going to miss Hajj. And Hajj is Arafah. So then here you can change your intention from Tamattu' to Qiran. So then you can just go to Arafah. You can go to Arafah. Any person who is in the same situation as what we mentioned now, they can change the intention from Tamattu' to Qiran. Then the Shaykh says that what are the actions of a Qarin? He says the actions of a Qarin and Mufrid is that the actions are the same. The actions are the same, except that they have to do, the Qarin has to give them. Here's a hadi. Here's a hadi, better to call it hadi. Hadi is to slaughter the animal. So therefore the Qarin and the Mufrid, Tamattu' is clear. Tamattu' you're going to come, you're going to do Umrah, come out of Umrah, then on the day of Hajj, the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, you're going to get your intention of Hajj and do what we mentioned last time. The Qarin and the Mufrid, they have a couple of situations. The actions are exactly the same. The actions are exactly the same. Either they come to the Haram, Mecca, to the Haram before the days of Hajj. So then they will enter into Mecca and they will perform Tawaf. This is called Tawaf al-Qudum, Tawaf of entering. Okay? After this Tawaf of entering, they can do Sa'i. They can do Sa'i if they want to. Because it's not Umrah. They're not intending Umrah. If they do Sa'i, this Sa'i counts for them as a Sa'i of Hajj. Therefore, you remember the Mutamatti', we said on the day of Hajj, on the day of slaughtering, Nahar, when he comes for the main Tawaf, then he has to do Sa'i after. He has to do Sa'i after. This Qarin and this Mufrid, if they did Sa'i beforehand, when they come to the Haram for the main Tawaf on day 10, then they can just do Tawaf and leave. One Sa'i. Or they can leave Sa'i for after Tawaf. On day 10. So they can do the Tawaf Qudum and leave. They can do Tawaf of Qudum and leave. There's one mas'ala with regards to the Sa'i and this Tawaf. It's actually a technical mas'ala. But it's mentioned by Al-Labadi in his chapter of Manasik. We'll see if this time we'll mention it. It's a very deep one with the Qari. If you've done this Tawaf that is Sunnah, Qudum, and you leave the Tawaf, you leave the Sa'i, then can you do Sa'i a couple of days later on the days of Hajj before the Tawaf of Umrah, the Tawaf of Hajj? Maybe we'll grasp that later when you mention this Masail of stipulations of Sa'i. But that's a deep Mas'ala. We'll maybe mention it. So what happens here is that this person, he does Tawaf al-Qudum and then he can do the Sa'i. He has the option to do Sa'i. And after that, he doesn't remove his hair because he's in Qiran or Mu'ifrat. He's not in Tamattu'. So then he'll go to Arafah, Mina, and then Arafah, he'll do the actions of Hajj, Muzdalifah, pelting, and then you come to the Haram on day 10 of Hajj Hijjah, and then you'll do Tawaf of Hajj, Tawaf of Ziyarah. And then afterwards you can do Sa'i. Afterwards you do Sa'i and then remove your hair, and like we mentioned last time. So what happens here is that the Qarin and the Mufrid, they have one Sa'i for Hajj and Umrah. The Mutamatti', he has two Sa'i. One for his Umrah and one of his day of Hajj. One of his Sa'i on the day of Hajj. And as for Tawaf, the Mufrid and the Qarin, if they came to Mecca beforehand and they did Qudum, then they'll have two Tawaf. They'll do two Tawaf, for Qudum and for Tawaf of Hajj. And if they just came to the Haram on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, or after, because there's no limit for the Tawaf of Hajj, then they'll do, on the madhab, also two. We mentioned this mas'ala by Ibn Rajab, Ibn Taymiyyah, and Ibn Qudama, and them said that this is mas'ala. Most of the ulama say that Tawaf al-Qudum goes into Tawaf of Hajj. We mentioned it last time. So on the riwayah thaniya, they have one Tawaf. One Tawaf. So one Tawaf and one Sa'i, done. That's where you give the dam of shukr. Because you're going to do what? You're going to do Hajj and Umrah in one thing, and you'll have one action. One action. And that's the Qarin, that's why we said he'll get the reward of both. That's why he gets the benefit. He gets the benefit. But you see how they together. The Mufrid and the Mutamatti', the Mufrid who does Hajj and then Umrah, he'll do a complete Hajj and a complete Umrah. The Qarin is doing two in one. That's why Ifrad is better if you do Umrah afterwards. If you do Umrah afterwards. In Al-Iqna' it says that Ifrad is better if you do Hajj and then Umrah, but they say Umrah you do if you have to do Umrah of Islam. Indicating that if you don't have to do Umrah of Islam, then you don't need to do Umrah, or there's no Umrah after Hajj. But in Muntaha and the other books, Tanqih and other books, they say you do Umrah even if you already did Umrah of Islam. So that's just with the technicality there. And then the next Masail that we're going to take, which are the final Masail, we'll run through them because we mentioned many of them in the previous lessons. But there's just a few things that we'll mention with more details here. The last Masail we'll take tonight, and that is, we mentioned some Masail connected to Tawaf and Sa'i. So now here the Shaykh mentions the main Masail connected to the stipulations and some Sunan of Tawaf and Sa'i. That's the last Masail we'll take, in fact, and then we'll take the Masail of Haram of Mecca and Medina, and we'll end off there inshallah. So the Shaykh says on the shurut of Tawaf, mutlaqan, any Tawaf, is that you have to have intention. So you have to have intention for Tawaf, that you are doing Tawaf, and intention that this is Tawaf of Umrah or Tawaf of Hajj. You have to have intention. What's the Tawaf for? Or it's a general Sunnah Tawaf, right? The exception to an intention is a child. A child. We said under Mumayyiz, there's no intention. So if the child, the wali has put him into Ihram, then the intention is from the wali. Intention is from the wali. And therefore, if somebody is, for example, looking for somebody, and they're going around the Kaaba, and they find the person, or they're looking for the person, and they realize, oh, I'm done 3 rounds. Let me just finish the last 4. We say not valid, because you need intention. You need intention. Then the Shaykh says, وَأَنْ يَبْدَأَ مِنَ الْحَجَرِ. This mas'ala is a mas'ala that's an issue on the madhab. It's an issue on the madhab, and scholars have written a ton on this, on how do you start your tawaf. How do you start on tawaf? It's actually an issue. So we're going to mention in summary of the mas'ala, and maybe more details in the future inshallah. So this one here is وَأَنْ يَبْدَأَ بِهِ مِنَ الْحَجَرِ. The tawaf has to start at the Hajar Aswad. Right, the Hajar Aswad, which is on the specific corner in the Kaaba. Across it they've put a green light. A green light to indicate this is the Hajar Aswad, and it's where you will begin the tawaf. The Hajar Aswad is if you're facing the door of the Kaaba. If you're facing the door of the Kaaba, then it's the corner on your left. The first one on your left, it's the Hajar Aswad. Okay, the black stone. Now, the scholars say you have to start at the Hajar Aswad. How do you start at the Hajar Aswad? This is a mas'ala, it's a problem on the madhab on how to grasp this one. And other scholars outside the madhab even give quite a few details on how to start this tawaf. So on the madhab, the point they want to get at is that you must start your tawaf and your entire body must not be already. You see, when you do tawaf, your entire body must be doing the tawaf. It mustn't be that when you start the tawaf, you're already slightly in advance of the Hajar Aswad. If your Hajar Aswad is, let's say, here by my finger, and you have to go towards my left here. So you have to start basically here, somewhere around here. If you've started already here, that means you've started in advance of the Hajar Aswad. So therefore, your complete tawaf is not there. So they actually are very strict on this. So how do you basically face the Hajar Aswad? This is an issue. This is where they have lots of kalam on the madhab how to do this. So some of the scholars say that what you do is that the Hajar Aswad is going to be almost in front of you, like on an angle. So they say you face the Hajar Aswad. When you start, you face the Hajar Aswad in a manner that some say that you must see the 2 sides of the Hajar Aswad. If you've seen the 2 sides, that means your whole body is in line with the Hajar Aswad. None of it is before. Others say that what happens is that the Hajar Aswad is there, but you start off from kind of in front of the Hajar Aswad, where your right shoulder is at the corner of the Hajar Aswad, so that you pass it with your whole body and then your tawaf starts. So they say you basically walk, starting the Hajar Aswad at the corners with your right shoulder, and then you walk facing the Hajar Aswad until you reach the other side of the Hajar Aswad. Then they say ثُمَّ يَأْخُذُ يَسَارًا. So you're facing the Hajar Aswad, and then you turn to have the Kaaba on your left. To have the Kaaba on your left. The whole point they're trying to say with this is that you must make sure that you must start the tawaf with your whole body towards the Hajar Aswad. So they give a lot of these technicalities, right? And they say your entire body must face the entire Hajar Aswad, or your entire body must face most of the Hajar Aswad, or a portion of the Hajar Aswad. Therefore, if you are slanted, if you are starting the tawaf and you are not facing the Hajar Aswad, but you're slanted, and you just did like this, pointing to the Hajar Aswad, in theory they say your tawaf is not correct. As technical as that. That's why the riwayah thani of Shaykh Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah alayhi rahmatullah is that you do not need your whole body to face the whole of the Hajar, or your whole body to face a portion of the Hajar. Even if a portion of your body faces a portion of the Hajar, it will be valid. And that makes it much easier for most people. That you face the Hajar and then you point to it, even if you're not facing it totally, but a portion of your body is facing it, you slightly tilt it and you can start your tawaf. And when they say you get parallel to it, this is now when you can't touch it, we're speaking about. Then the further you go, then you can be, sometimes people struggle because they want to get exact precise because of the technicalities the fuqaha say. So you're basically trying to stand there and you're trying to face yourself exactly to get to there and then to point to the Hajar. In the past, there'd be kind of lines, 2 lines on the floor of the mataf. And then if you got to there, then you'd be in between where the Hajar is. So they had technicalities. Then they took it out. The mashayikh took it out and they put the light. Actually, they had something else like 1 line, I think. And then they put the light to show that you don't need to be exactly precise and have all these technicalities and then cause a crowd there. You just need to be, can you see it? Can you see basically the Hajar? And then you point to it and you go. And you go. Bismillah. And then you say what you're going to say. So when it comes, you start in your tawaf. The sunnah is, if you can touch the Hajar Aswad, then they say the sunnah is to touch the Hajar Aswad. But not to touch it. I said touch, they say masah. You don't just touch, you wipe with your right hand. Basically put your hand on it and kind of wipe. That's one sunnah. Then another sunnah, if you can do this, is to kiss the Hajar Aswad. To kiss the Hajar Aswad. So the scholars say, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what did he do? He put his lips on it and he lifted his lips. So they say it's a kiss, taqbil bila sawt. That you kiss without sound. So it's not like a kissing sound, you put your lips on the Hajar and you lift it. That's how it's done. The third sunnah is to do sajda on the Hajar Aswad. So sajda here doesn't refer to putting your, like sajda in salah. It means your nose and your forehead is put on the Hajar Aswad. That's what it means. So if you can do that, that's the best option. The second option, if you can't do that, is that you touch the Hajar Aswad. You wipe it with your hand, your right hand, and then you kiss your right hand. Number 3, you can't do that, then you take something else and you use that thing to touch the Hajar Aswad. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he couldn't touch the Hajar Aswad, he used like a staff, kind of a stick, to touch the Hajar Aswad. Then that thing you use, whether it's a staff, whether it's a piece of clothing, whatever it is, then you take that and you kiss that thing. And number 4, if you can't do that, then you get yourself parallel to the Hajar and then you wave at it. With your right hand, one hand, you wave at it. And then you say, Bismillahi Allahu Akbar. Allahumma imanan bik. Allahumma, the Shaykh says the dua, Allahumma imanan bik. Wa tasdeeqan bi kitabik. Wa wafa'an bi ahdik. Wa wafa'an bi ahdik. Wa ittiba'an li sunnati nabiyik. You say that dua. It's mentioned in many books of how to do Hajj and Tawaf, etc. So you say that and then you begin your Tawaf. Right? And then you go all the way to the point where you started. And Ibn Taymiyyah says the complete way is that you end your tawaf again parallel to Hadi. You parallel to the Hajar Aswad. And if you can again kiss it at the end, to istilam of it, touch it, and so then you do it. Okay? And every time you touch the Hajar Aswad, and you're able to touch it and kiss it, then you recite this dua. If you're not able to touch it and you're going to wave at it, then for every round now afterwards, you say Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. So you're walking, and then we're going to come to how to face, but you're walking around, then you reach the Hajar Aswad, you say Allahu Akbar, and your next round starts. Now what you have to do with Tawaf is that the Kaaba must be on your left. The Kaaba must be on your left. You can't have the Kaaba behind you or something. So in crowds and things, you have to make sure that the Kaaba is on your left. If you pushed in crowds, etc., you make sure the Kaaba is on your left. In fact, the Zahir Kalam of the Fuqaha is that even a child, if you've made a child in Ihram, then the child also has to do Tawaf in a method where the Kaaba is to his left. Okay, so you don't hold him on your right arm, for example, because then his chest is towards the Kaaba is towards his chest. So that will be a problem, the Zahir Kalam of the Fuqaha, that they don't differentiate between a child and an older person. That's why the scholars say that you must be sure and ready before you put a child in Ihram. Meaning, when I don't mean the clothing, I mean the intention that this child is going to do Hajj or Umrah, because all of these things then apply to him. And you can't just leave the Ihram, he has to complete the Hajj or the Umrah. So therefore, the Kaaba must be on your left. Ibn Taymiyyah says that in space goes around towards the left. So in the outer worlds, the preference is given from the left to the right. So here with the Kaaba, you're given right to left. Preference is given there. And then also, you have your heart is on your left side, it's closer to the Kaaba. And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, Tahwi ilayhim. That they basically, people, they yearn towards the Kaaba. And yearning happens in the heart, so your heart is closer to the Kaaba. So you do it like that. You do it like that. Okay? So, and then you go for Tawaf. Then as you come to each round, the Zahir Kalam of the Fuqaha, that some of the Mashayikh mention, is that you do not need to face the Kaaba exactly, the Hajar Aswad exactly during the other rounds as you did in the beginning. So in the beginning you can just point. And after the beginning you can just point. You don't need to face exactly. As you're going, you can tilt a bit and point like that. Okay, and outside of the madhab, some of the fuqaha say that the only time where your tawaf is valid, do not keep the Kaaba on your left. Because remember at the beginning, we said you're walking to the Hajar, that 1 or 2 steps, the Hajar is in front of you, and thereafter you turn to your left. They say the only exception where the Kaaba is not on your left is at the beginning. So it gives off that when you come around 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, then what's happening? You don't need to turn again, do that same system. Because now it's as if you're in motion, so you already, your whole body is doing the tawaf. Okay, so that's most important masail with regards to tawaf. In tawaf, the best thing is to do dua, to supplicate to Allah with any dua. Best is what comes in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran. And between the Rukn Yamani, which is the last pillar that you're going to pass before the Hajar, between that one and the Hajar Aswad, it's sunnah to say رَبَّنَا أَتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Another thing that is mustahab in tawaf is to recite the Quran. And so dhikr, and also dhikr, you can do dhikr. So dhikr, Quran, dua, and also because the hadith, the Shaykh quotes that the tawaf is salah. So it's the same as salah, therefore we have the rules of tahara, etc., except that you're allowed to speak. But it's better not to engage in useless kalam, useless speech. Engage in good speech, mentioning some rules of ilm, or enjoining good and forbidding evil. That's what you do during the tawaf. We mentioned salah after the tawaf, we mentioned all of that. There's a few masail here, and that is with regards to the tawaf, is that you have to do your complete round. If you leave a small amount, your tawaf is not valid. You have to have intended that you're doing tawaf, we mentioned it, okay, except for the young person. That also means when it comes to ihram, I forgot to mention it there, and that is a person can intend that he's going into ihram. So he doesn't specify the time of his intention, I'm intending Hajj or Umrah. Then before he does his first action, before he does the tawaf, then he specifies what he's intending. Intention is done in the heart, that he's intending Hajj or Umrah. And the scholars say it would be better for him to do intention for Hajj. So you can, at the miqat, you can say, let's say you want to go on the 7th Dhul Hijjah, 8th Dhul Hijjah, and you want to see the crowd. Before I decide I'm doing Umrah, is it too full, then I'll do Hajj. So you can intend, I'm going to Ihram. So you pass the miqat with Ihram. And then we ask the person, are you doing Hajj or are you doing Umrah? He said, I'm not sure yet. I'll decide when I reach the Haram. Permissible. As long as before he starts Tawaf, he makes his intention. And you're allowed to say, I intend the Ihram of so-and-so. Even if you don't know what is Ihram, it's valid. And then as long as you know before you start. But it's not permissible to say, I intend Ihram if so-and-so is doing Ihram. Because that's taraddud, that's unsure. and you're not allowed to do that. Okay? So therefore, this person, he has to intend his nusuk before he starts his ihram. The only exception we said is a young person. So you have to intend your nusuk, you have to intend tawaf, you don't miss anything. Also, if you have to make sure you don't do tawaf on what is called the shadharwan. عرفت الشاذروان يا شيخ؟ ايه يسمى كده. عجيب. On the Kaaba, if you look at the bottom of the Kaaba, there's those kind of tile that's like a slant at the bottom of the Kaaba. شفت الشيء المائل اللي نازل. ايه. That's called shadharwan. ايه نعم. They say that's part of the Kaaba. Many of the scholars say it's part of the Kaaba, but the Kaaba was not completely built, so the Shadharwan, it was supposed to be part of the Kaaba, but they didn't reach that point. Ibn Taymiyyah says it's not part of the Kaaba. But the qaida is al-hawa ya'khudh hukm al-qarar. So therefore, when you have to do tawaf, you do it around the Kaaba. Therefore, if you did tawaf on the Shadharwan, it's not really possible today because the Shadharwan is made slanted. So in the later years, recently, a few decades ago, they made the Shadharwan slanted so that you can't do tawaf on it. You can't do tawaf on it. Because if somebody did tawaf there, it's just on the bottom, they'd be doing tawaf as if they're doing tawaf in the Kaaba. In the Kaaba. Therefore, the scholars say, if you were to put your hand on the Hajar Aswad or your hand on the Kaaba during tawaf and you were to walk like that, you would have walked with your hand, it's as if it's in the Kaaba because it's the air of the Shadharwan. So here the scholars question, is this going to be deemed your tawaf is short or not? So here the mashhur of the madhab is that most of your body is outside the Shadharwan or it's outside of the Hajar. Therefore, your tawaf is valid. Your tawaf is valid. Also, you make sure you don't do any tawaf on that hatim, that half circle where it's called Hajar Ismail, people call it, that you don't do tawaf there because that part of it is deemed part of the Kaaba. So you do tawaf around it. Another thing is that you have to do tawaf on tahara. So tawaf without tahara is not valid. The Shaykh said that only for tawaf is tahara wajibah. But for the rest of the part of Hajj, it is sunnah. It is sunnah to have tahara. So sa'i, etc., it's sunnah. It's not a wajib. Then another mas'ala with regards to tawaf is that you have to be free from impurity. Just like salah. That's why the hadith says tawaf is like salah. Except that you are allowed to speak. You are allowed to speak. Another thing for tawaf on the mashhur of the madhab is that you need, because we said tahara, if your tahara breaks, your entire tawaf breaks. So you have to start again. Then you need muwala in your tawaf as well as your sa'i. Muwala between one round of tawaf and between the rounds of tawaf. Therefore, what will break muwala is a long period of time where you stopped. You just took a break. So what would be a long period? Again, we say urf. What would people looking at it would be deemed a long period? So you sat for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it's overlooked. But now you sat for 10 minutes, you say this guy is as if he's out of tawaf, he's done already. Because it's a long break, 5, 6 minutes, a long break. So that would break the tawaf, you have to start again. Small period, it would break the round. On the mashhur, it will break the round. Another thing is, if you stopped for the farad salah or salatul janazah, that's deemed a small amount. So after that, you start from the Hajar Aswad again. You start your round from the Hajar Aswad again. Same for sa'i. But except for the tahara, will not break sa'i because you don't need to be in tahara for sa'i. A long break, it will break your sa'i. But a small gap, small break, or salah, or farad salah, or janazah salah, you just start the round again from where you start from Safa or Marwa. We mentioned it in more details in the previous lesson. The last few masail with regards to tawaf is that tawaf, we mentioned that you do iltiba' in your tawaf of Umrah or tawaf of Qudum. That's the only two. You do iltiba'. We mentioned it last time. And also ramal. We mentioned the masail of ramal with regards to ramal. And that's with regards to tawaf. That's where the Shaykh mentions about tawaf. With regards to sa'i, you also need one more mas'ala with tahara, and that is the exception of tahara is for a child. The child that is not mumayyiz, his tahara is not valid in the first place. So he's the one overlooked for tahara. As for najasa, and then the fuqaha say, Shaykh Mansour al-Buhuti mentions it, that even for a child, even for a non-mumayyiz we're speaking about, he has to be free of najasa. Therefore, you have to be sure the child is the baby, for example, in his diaper, there's no impurity. Otherwise, his tawaf would not be valid. Your own tawaf, you'd be carrying impurity, like salah. So in salah, the riwayah thaniya is that if you didn't know this impurity, then it's overlooked. If you didn't know until you finished, it's overlooked. But you try and avoid those things. You try and avoid those things if you can. If you cannot clean the child and you have no option but to hold him, then it's overlooked. That means impurity you can't help to clean. So it's overlooked. Same with the child. If now he soiled himself and then you can't clean, then the same thing will be overlooked in tawaf. In theory, you'd have to repeat the tawaf. In theory, you'd have to repeat the tawaf because your tawaf would be invalid. You did tawaf with najasa and you can repeat it. But then sometimes it will be difficult when there's crowds, etc., to do it again, or a person is old or something. Then his tawaf would be valid. Otherwise, he has impurity on him or carrying impurity that's not overlooked. Like how for salah, if it's not overlooked, then you have to restart. You have to do it again, unless you found out, you realized after. Unless you realized after. But if you realized during, then actually your tawaf would be broken. Your tawaf would be broken. Same with you, same with the child. That's what it would actually be in theory. So then that would have to be looked at further to what to do there. But in theory, it would be broken. You'd have to clean the child or put the child on the side, and then you do your tawaf again. You do your tawaf again. So that's for tawaf. Then our last few things is sa'i. Then with regards to sa'i, there's just a few masail with sa'i. Sa'i, you need intention as well. That's the main thing. And with sa'i, you need your intention of sa'i, except for the child, as we mentioned. And also another stipulation of sa'i is that you have the muwala between the rounds of sa'i. We mentioned it just now. The rules that is exactly as tawaf, as we said. The last thing is that sa'i is only valid after a tawaf, even if it's a sunnah tawaf. Which is the sunnah tawaf? Qudum. And it's sunnah to have muwala between tawaf and sa'i. So it's not a must. It's sunnah only to have muwala between tawaf and sa'i. Therefore, that's what connects to our mas'ala of if a person did sa'i, tawaf of qudum, then he wants to do sa'i a few days later at Hajj. Can he begin with the sa'i? It links to this. We won't mention it because of the time. We want to finish these masail. So then tahara, sunnah, covering the private parts, sunnah, but it's a must in tawaf. If the private parts show in tawaf, it will be the same as salah. Those are rules exactly the same. Impurity, sunnah in sa'i to be free of impurity. So sa'i, the rules are much less. But you have to make sure that you've completed the 7 rounds completely and that you started with safa. That's with regards to sa'i. Then our final masail we're going to take, and that is with regards to the haram of Mecca and Medina. The one thing the Shaykh says, we mentioned it already, and that is what to recite in tawaf and also in sa'i. The best thing in sa'i is dua, dhikr, Quran, and also speech, as we said, exactly as we said for tawaf, the same thing in sa'i. So then our last masail is with regards to the haram of Mecca and Medina. The haram of Mecca and Medina are sacred. They are sacred. So certain things that are allowed in the rest of the world are not allowed in the haram area of Mecca and Medina. So in Mecca, if you go into Mecca, there's an area called the haram area. It's demarcated in Mecca. You will see signs. And the same with Medina. Now it will say, now you've exited the haram area. Now you've entered the haram area. These rules we're going to mention, they connected to the haram of Mecca and the haram of Medina. The haram of Mecca is even more sacred than the haram of Medina. So when it comes to the haram of Mecca, the animals in the hunting animals in the haram of Mecca and Medina, you're not allowed to hunt them. Even tanfir as-sayd, even to throw a stone or to scare the hunting animals, you're not allowed. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. This is a safe place. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ, because everything is safe in Mecca. That's why when we did balagha, we mentioned why Allah says, لَا أُقْسِمُ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ. And you are hil in this balad. And Allah doesn't say, وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ في هذا البلد الأمين. So in this haram, everything is safe. Even the hunting animals. Therefore the hunting animals, if you are in ihram or not, you are not allowed to hunt the animals in the haram. If you hunt them, there's a penalty. Even if you're not in ihram and you've hunted an animal in the haram area, there's a penalty. What's the penalty? We'll mention it in the next dars when we come to these masail of hunting animals. And then these masail, when you've hunted in the haram, the rules are exactly the same as if a person in ihram hunts. So the rules will be exactly the same in terms of the penalty, in terms of indicating to a hunting animal, in terms of eating this, is it halal, etc. We'll mention it in the next dars, inshallah. Even animals, animals that are fish, water animals, like fish, In the Haram area, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to catch them. If, for example, they became like water formed because of rain and fish happen to come, you can't catch that fish. You can't hunt these. You can't go fishing there. Everything is safe in the Haram area, right? With regards to the animals, but there's no penalty if you went and caught the fish that came there itself in the Haram area. Okay, number one. So there's no penalty for the animals. Then what else is haram in the Haram of Mecca, right? Is you cannot take leaves from the trees in the Haram area. You cannot you cannot cut or break trees or break branches of the trees in the Haram area. Even if it is hay for your animals, you can't break it off. Things that grow on the earth that's similar to hay, you can't break it off. You can't break it off in the Haram area. Even the trees are safe. Even the trees are safe in the Haram area. Therefore, if this leaves on the tree, or the tree itself is the leaves on the tree is green, or the hay is green, meaning it's not dead, then you can't do it. If it is dead already, you can do it. You can take it. You can remove it. You can bring your animals to do alaf, to basically eat from it, but you can't pull it out and bring it to them. But they can come and eat. Okay. If there is part of this tree that is broken itself, or something else is broken other than a human, even if it's not completely off the tree, you can make use of it. You can take it off and make use of it. Another thing you can do from the trees in the Haram area, when we say the trees in the Haram area, it means those that are growing themselves. No human has planted it. That's our rule here. Also, if there's fruits on the trees, you can pluck it. Also, those things that are under the ground, called كمأة or فقع. Hey, this is like a truffle, like a fungi kind of truffle that grows in the Hijaz area. This you're allowed to have. Another thing is idkhir. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu told Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that make an exception for us to use idkhir. So idkhir is يقولون حشيش طيب الرائحة. So basically it's a plant, it's got a fragrant smell. It's similar to like how lemongrass. It looks like lemongrass, similar grows like that. It's a plant, it's got a nice smell to it. So this people used to use in the houses and for different uses. You can make use of this. So these are a few exceptions of the things you can use in Mecca. If you've broken a tree in Mecca and it's a small tree, urfan, small tree, you have to slaughter a sheep for it. And then distribute it, how we're going to mention for sight, for the hunting animals. If you've broken or pulled out or cut off and destroyed a tree that is bigger than a small tree, then you have to give the penalty of a camel or a cow. Exactly how we'll mention for sight. And how you distribute is the same. If you took from the leaves or from the hashish, like the similar to hay, from the trees of Mecca or the plants of Mecca, then you have to give that value in charity. Distributed and things, exactly how we'll mention in the chapter of jaza of the sight, the penalty of the sight. If you've taken from the branch of a tree, you have to give in penalty the worth, how much the worth of that plant has lost. The plant is worth so much, now that you've removed the branch, how much has it lost? That amount you have to give in penalty as a penalty. But if you've put the tree back or the branch has grown back and now there's no defect in it anymore, then the penalty falls. But if you've put the tree back and before when it grew itself it was worth so much, and now that you took it out, even though you put it back its worth is gone a bit less, or same from the branch, even though it's grown back a new branch but its worth is gone less, you have to then you have to pay for that small difference. But it's allowed to, the scholars say you don't take out from the soil of Mecca. I think they say makruh to take from the soil of Mecca, from the Haram area, but you can take Zamzam out. So that's with regards to the Haram of Mecca. The Haram of Medina, you're also not allowed to slaughter. So Al-Iqna' indicates that if somebody were to slaughter, the slaughtering would be correct, but it's haram to do so. So the haram aspect and the halal aspect of the animal is different. The haram aspect in terms of sin and the halal aspect of the animal is different. And for Medina, you are allowed to take from the things or the plants that the animals will eat from. In Medina also, if there's a need to make use of the wood of the tree for tools or something of benefit, you're allowed to break the tree for the wood. In Mecca, you're not allowed at all. And the scholars say that Mecca is better than Medina. And in blessed times and blessed places, the reward increases and so does the sin. The reward increases and so does the sin. But many of the scholars say the sin increases in terms of kayf or kayfiyya la kammiyya. So the penalty for the sin is that the penalty is more in terms of the level of the punishment, not the amount of punishment. So let's say you were to get one punch, for example, for doing something. So now in the blessed areas, the punch would be harder, and not that you get more punches. So the punch, because Allah says, وَمَنْ جَاءَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ فَلَهُ عَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا وَمَنْ جَاءَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ فَلَا يُجْزَى إِلَّا مِثْلَهَا. That if you did a sin, you only get the punishment of a sin. And then in the riwayah thani, in the madhab, is that a sin also multiplies. Because Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu mentions like that. So they have a technical way of understanding how does a sin multiply, even though the ayah says that. But we'll leave it out because of time. So that's with regards to those masail. Because of time, I won't mention the mas'ala of is the tada'if, is the reward more in the haram area or in the Masjidul Haram or Masjidul Nabawi or the haram area. Inshallah, for another time we'll come to it. But for that we end our dars there. Inshallah, we're almost done with Hajj. Inshallah, 2 lessons left. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to teach us that which benefits us and benefit us with that which He teaches us. Wa sallallahu sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.